Hello everyone and welcome to episode 19 of The Best You, a coaching podcast. It's Gary here again, and as always I'd like to start off by taking this opportunity to thank you very, very much for tuning in to this particular episode. And of course I hope you're all doing fantastically well and working on whatever growth work you've committed to getting you closer to the best version of you. I did mention on the last episode that I'm in the process right now of looking to invite some other guests on to the podcast. I don't think it's going to be this particular version of the podcast. I think I'll continue with this format for now just to see this is my staple or my foundational type and style of podcast delivery, and maybe just do a feature series of other speakers. I've spoken to a couple of other speakers who I think would be a very good fit just to basically expand the conversation and give both myself and hopefully you other things to think about, other ways to look at things, not with any specific topic in mind. The theme of mine is personal growth, it's self-development, it's coaching, it's doing whatever you can to become a better version of yourself. Not that the version of you right now, there's anything wrong with that, but everyone likes to get a little bit better. Certainly anyone who would be listening to a coaching podcast that's called The Best You, I would imagine. But yeah, that's what I'm going to do over the next little while. So we have some in principle agreements with a couple of the speakers, and they're actually other podcasters, and I have another couple of interviews coming up as we move forward. So more on that when I have more definitive information to share, and I suspect the definitive information to share would be indeed the fact that we have recorded and it is ready to be published, and just a little bit more about the content that you can expect. So in this episode we're going to work through some of the content that never really made it into the most recent blog that discussed the topic of motivation, and we'll also cover a bit of a masterclass report which I've done over the last couple of episodes. This will probably be the last one for a wee while. I've watched a bunch of them, but I only have kind of extensive notes on some of them so you get what you get. But this one is from a course that I completed quite a wee while back by Geno Auriemma. I hope I haven't butchered his name, and he is the head coach of the University of Connecticut Huskies basketball team, the female team. I believe they made it to the Final Four. I don't think they got to the final of the recent March Madness tournament, but very storied and very successful coach over the years. Also coached the women's Olympic team, I believe, on 2 occasions maybe. I'm not 100% sure about that. Please don't quote me on that just in case I'm wrong, but we'll get to that when we get to that. Before that, I'll discuss a little bit about what I've learned since we last chatted, and continuing on the theme of Growth Day. As I mentioned also last time, the theme that we do have to cover for this month is love and relationships on Growth Day. And there's been a number of courses. There's a Wednesday training, there's supplementary information that has been shared. And the one thing I did want to share was training that I completed recently by a fellow by the name of Anthony Trucks. And, there's different sound bites and tidbits and quotes and such that I capture in my notes when I'm going through stuff like this. And one of them I absolutely loved was life responds to effort. Not desire, not complaints, not thoughts, not wants, etc. Life responds to the effort that you make. There's a wee bit of a theme there which will resonate with you when I talk about motivation in a wee while here, which is fairly similar to that. But I loved the reference there of life responds to. And then it responds to effort, it responds to action, it responds to other things, but not some things as well. So I'll leave it at that for now, and I'll explain a wee bit more about that in a wee while here. And the second part that I captured from that particular course was people behave the way that they believe they deserve to be treated. It is what they believe their worth is. So think about this in terms of the type and style of people you have in your network, in your community, in your family, in your friend circle and such, and how you treat them and how they treat you, how you absorb the way you're treated, how they absorb the way that they are treated. And think about that. People behave the way they believe they deserve to be treated. It is what they believe their worth is. So is there anything that maybe doesn't resonate with you in terms of the way that you get treated, but you just kind of take it because that person has more tenure than you, that person has been around the community longer in some way, that person has more experience, that person is in some way in your mind superior to you, so therefore you maybe in some way compromise your core principles or values to be treated in such a way. Not to say that you're going to go out and pick a fight with anyone, I don't mean anything like that, but just think about how you get treated by others, how you treat others, and the behaviour of either yourself or the other person. And is that commensurate with what you're hoping it would be for you or others? So a couple of little gems there that I thought I'd like to mention. On the mastermind, continued working through the Business Academy education and working out, really getting close now to truly getting the course, my foundational course, which is going to deal with internal and external blockers, recorded and ready for distribution. I might actually also do the first cohort of this live. So when you're literally, when you attend the class, you will literally be interacting with me, then maybe recording that and then recording other supplementary tidbits that would be in addition to the course. But I guess what I'm saying there is I'm still just getting the final mode of delivery sorted out, but very, very close to that. And I also attended last week the event called The Game Has Changed with Dean Graziosi and Tony Robbins, and went through, essentially they give you a whole bunch of self-development, self-education, prompts, hints, tips, tricks, guidance and advice, and through themselves and through other people who have been through that type and style of trainings before and are experiencing successful circumstances and situations right now, and also from other genuine worldwide superstar keynotes. And the reason I mention that is that it was a great 3 days, which actually ended up spilling into 4 days. And I also saw a fellow by the name of Stephen Bartlett, and I have heard of him before, and I'm fairly sure I've seen the odd clip on, say, for example, LinkedIn or possibly Facebook. It's more likely to be LinkedIn because that's where I spend most of my time. And I thought he was very, very impressive, folks. I really did. I'm going to actually commit to doing a lot more research on him going forward, because just the message he shared, the intent way that he listened to the interviewer, which was actually Dean Graziosi. I just combined both of his names there. But he had a lot to say. Fairly young guy from England. I don't actually know where he's from in England. And it was just, I thought the stuff, his delivery and the way that he delivered his content was very, very impressive. So I'm going to do a wee bit more digging on him and see what I can find and learn and grow from the stuff that he has there. And as I mentioned, my course will be organised here shortly, probably actually by the next podcast that I broadcast. There'll be some definitive information. I'm going to go on a wee bit of a social media campaign here over the next little while. And a couple of Friday findings, which I do. If I haven't mentioned Friday findings before, it's basically a one-off video that I post onto LinkedIn and now to my new Facebook community that I created about a week or so ago. If you would like to subscribe to that Facebook community, search Gary Gillen Coaching, and you'll have access to go in there and see the content that I've popped in there. And the couple of Friday findings that I put on for the last little while, certainly on LinkedIn, I think one of them has just made its way over to Facebook thus far, is how to think. How to actually manifest your thoughts and thinking in ways that are going to serve you, and how do you do it? How do I do it? Essentially, is the theme of the Friday finding, of kind of saying, this is how I do it. Do you do something similar? I'd love to hear from you. Or this is what I'm struggling with. It's basically just what I've discovered in that specific week. So just the art and style of thinking and how distracted you are or aren't when you're thinking was essentially the theme of that. And the one from just this past week there was on routine. And, essentially just kind of what happens when you take for granted your routine. and how quickly you notice that you've slipped from your routine and how much that does or doesn't serve you at a specific point in time. It depends how rigid you want things. It depends how much your routine has been established with intent and how much it's actually literally serving you in the moment, and to get to your more kind of medium to longer term goals as well. So those are some things, and it's basically just things that I genuinely learned from that week that I just want to share with some folks. So if you'd like to see any of them, you can go and visit my profile on LinkedIn just under my name, and you'll see all the Friday Findings videos from I think I've been doing it now for 3 or 4 months, 4 or 5 months, something like that. So on to the actual content for this time, and we're going to do a bit of an overview here of blog number 20, which was titled 9 Ideas to Enhance Your Motivation Experience. If you go to my website to see it, it will just say motivation in the box, but the actual title in and of itself is the 9 Ideas. And I started the blog by saying that I believe that motivation is essentially one of the most used and dare I say it, often misused terms when describing a person, a group or a team or an organisation's behaviour. In a sense, I feel that it's become a bit of a catch-all statement that summarises or maybe sometimes justifies a particular behaviour, a particular course of action. And the reason I say that is that we can use, the phrase, I'm motivated to do this, or there's just an inherent lack of motivation for this as a reason or rationale for something, but then kind of stop and not delve any further to see what that actually uncovers, what's under the covers of that. Is it genuinely actually motivation that is causing you to do something or not to do something? And if it's not motivation, which we'll get to in terms of the actual technicalities of what motivation is, then what is it? And it's okay if it's not motivation, but I just feel that that's almost like the kind of, if I could say it, the lazy go-to to say, I'm just not motivated today, I can't quite shake myself out of it. That might not be the case. You might be inherently tired, you might be undernourished, you might be injured, you might be sad, you might be in some other way encumbered. So just a food for thought at the beginning of the blog. Because at one point or another, we have all felt incredibly motivated by something or to do something, and by the same token, on the opposite side of the spectrum, incredibly unmotivated to do something. And I think that the information is there, and I would challenge you to figure out exactly why that is, and that's essentially what the blog theme was. So I started off by saying, what motivation is. It includes a motive, which is something that causes a person or group or team or such to act in a certain way, to do a certain thing, an incentive, which then leads to the subject of motivate. And motivate, this is almost verbatim from dictionary.com. You'll see that on the actual blog itself if you go to visit that. And the motive is to provide motivate is to provide with a motive or a cause or reason to act, to essentially incite or impel someone to do something. So we need a clear motive which will drive or compel us, motivate us to act, react, pursue a goal, or behave in any sort of particular way. And it's described, motivation then, to go on from the motive and then motivate. Motivation is described as the state or condition of being motivated or having a strong reason to act or accomplish something. So is that what you thought it was? Is that like are you rolling your eyes saying, yeah, duh, that's a no-brainer? Or if not, what did you think it was? And what do you use as motivation? What kind of body of evidence do you use in terms of motivation? I'd like to challenge you to think about that a wee bit. And the main thing, and it's kind of almost buried at the top of the blog, the main thing I'd like you to take away from this podcast, if nothing else related to motivation, is that you cannot engage in the act of motivation. And what I mean by that is you can't inherently motivate someone. You can work towards motivation by creating conditions where motivation would be the likely and hopefully desired outcome, but the singular act of performing or providing motivation isn't a thing. So you need to then know and understand what motivates people and then create conditions that would be motivating. And the example I provided, I say this in class as well. You're not going to say to your significant other as you're leaving in the morning, "Oh, busy morning this morning. I'm busy motivating the team between 9:30 and 11 a.m. and I'm going to do a great job of it." And then you get the, "Well, good luck for you," and a wee kiss, "Thanks very much, sweetheart," and off you go. It's nothing like that. You can't do that. You can only create conditions. And to create conditions, you need to know what motivates people, as I said. And what's the best way to figure out what motivates people? It's to ask. It's as simple as that. So you need to engage in dialogue with the people, groups, whomever it is you're trying to get to motivate, to be motivated to do something that you want or need them to do. You need to ask questions, be curious, try things, use the data from what you've tried and then modify as you move forward. You cannot motivate someone. You can only create conditions that would be motivating for them. That's the key. Now, that doesn't mean you don't listen to the rest of this, because the rest of it's quite important, but that's the main thing I wanted to get you to understand from this particular segment here. What it's not really feeling compelled or inspired to act or accomplish something. It's more than that. Active motivation involves applying yourself, applying your time, your energy, your skills, your effort, your endeavour, your concentration, your determination, towards whatever you're motivated to do. So in short, it's essentially about taking a feeling and then acting on it. Feeling motivated, having good intentions and creating new or good ideas is not action. And I alluded to that earlier on when I was doing the quotes. These are all nice things, but they're just essentially fantasy. They're daydreaming, and they bear no fruit for you or for other people for that matter. And they're literally just a bit of a waste of your time. If you don't take your thoughts, your feelings, your intentions, your ideas and such, and turn them into action, then that's not motivated or even demotivated. That's just vapor. That's just air that in some way is not going to serve you when it's not manifested into anything that would be action oriented. We all do have times, as I mentioned earlier there, where we feel really buzzed up about something, don't we? We've listened to, for example, an inspiring podcast like this one, or watched a documentary or a movie or a TV show or a band or something, and we've just felt that surge of inspiration and that manifests itself into feeling compelled to take some sort of action. And we might even take some sort of action, in the moment. And then on reflection, a period of time later, say for example 3, 6, 9, 12, 18 months or so, you kind of think back in some way to revisit, what happened and what subsequently took place after the event. And then you realise you didn't really follow through on any of your original thoughts or intentions or your motivation for that. So do you ever wonder why that is? I think part of it is timing. A big part of it is timing and taking action. There's an action theme here, of course. Hopefully you can pick up on that by now. And taking action as close as possible to the feeling, to the experience that you had, is going to help you remember things and hopefully keep your motivation high to continue to move forward and do good things with what you've learned. The longer you leave something, the more easily you're going to forget. You're going to find something else that's very appropriate to you in your life at that particular time to replace what you originally intended to do or what you originally thought you were motivated to do. And I think we'll talk a wee bit more about that maybe on another pod. Types of motivation, two main types. One was intrinsic, driven by yourself, driven by your internal factors, your influences, what's exactly meaningful for you, your core values, what's important to you. And extrinsic, driven by external rewards, things that you would desire from externally, rewards, outcomes, consequences, something like that. And you work towards an outcome that will in some way benefit you from the outside. and the examples that we provided in the blog were external validation, praise, recognition, rewards, monetary benefits, or such. And just being aware of what motivates you is going to help you understand what's important to you, what isn't important to you, and whether your behaviour in and of that moment is commensurate with your underlying motivations. As I've mentioned on many pods and blogs before, you have the data already, folks. You really, truly do. So the benefits of motivation, if it's used for good: increased productivity. If you're motivated to do it, the chances are you're actually going to do it with energy, with fervour, leading to accomplishing more than you might if you're in a less motivated state. Goal achievement, being committed, is going to help you drive forward and create momentum towards achieving your goals. Improved focus and concentration. What bad outcomes can come from being more focused and concentrating on something, unless you're concentrating and focused on the wrong things, of course. You might not know that at the time, but there's nothing bad that can come from improving your focus and your concentration. Enhanced creativity and innovation, increased resilience and persistence. And the book Ogmandino that I did a book report on some time back, one of the scrolls of the book of the greatest salesman said, "I will persist until I succeed." So creating that resilience to ensure that your persistence is going to be at the optimum levels would be a great byproduct if your motivation is used for good. Boosted confidence and self-esteem. The main lesson here is that people are motivated by progress. People are buoyed by progress. And if you then start to get that motivation, if you start to feel progress and just gain momentum and move forward with that, that manifests itself and feeds itself. The motivation essentially would feed itself to greater heights. Then positivity and well-being. Fulfillment, satisfaction, and overall well-being would be a byproduct, which leads to more positive outlook on your life and on your circumstances. Stronger relationships. Think about, from a relationship perspective, think about the people that you're more drawn to spending time with. Are they motivated or demotivated? Are they motivating or demotivating? One of my best friends back home, who sadly passed away about 6 years ago, almost 6 years ago now, his name was Ramy, and we were kind of like the polar opposites, and I think that's why the friendship worked so great. And every time I used to call him, either from Canada where I live now, or even when we were living in the same country when I was back home in Scotland, I would phone and say, "Hello, how's it going?" And then he would just come back with some sort of essentially unmotivated, pessimistic rubbish. And then we would have the conversation. But by the end of the conversation, we're laughing, we're joking. He's kind of ridiculing me of the things that I'm into and interested in. But it was buoying for him because I was motivating for him. I knew that. And that's, as I say, how the relationship worked. He didn't in any way demotivate me. It was almost just that kind of, he needs a little bit of me and I think I need a little bit of him as well. And it worked fantastically well, and that really strengthened the relationship. And the last one is personal growth and development. Now, I know that I always say this and it always does come up. I appreciate that. This is what it's all about for me, genuinely investing in and being aware of your personal growth and your development. And then the consequences of using motivation poorly would be flipping that list of productivity, goal achievement, innovation, resilience, persistence, and such. And then I added in a few other bits and pieces here that would also be negative. You would then get involved in procrastination, which doesn't really serve anyone at any time. Burnout, if you're not managing your energy well enough. Disengagement from what it is you're trying to do or the people that you're trying to do it with. Increased stress and anxiety because something is just off. It's just not right. It's more difficult than it should be. It's less enjoyable or whatnot. Negative mental health implications that can come from the increased stress and anxiety that you might be experiencing, and which might manifest itself in then to challenges that you experience in the workplace. And the last one that I had offered up there in the blog was challenges in and around decision making. If you're not in the right frame of mind to make appropriate decisions, ideally you would know that you're not in the right frame of mind and you would do something about that. Postpone the decision, ask for supplementary support, guidance, advice or assistance, or something else, that would be meaningful for you in terms of making that decision. pass, transfer, for example, the decision making to someone else. A lot of times we don't do that. And then a lot of times we're in a situation where we end up making a decision that we know has less of a chance of being the right decision, but we just persevere anyway. That's when perseverance doesn't suit you. You have to be aware enough of self to understand who and where you are, how motivated you are by this decision, by the art of making the decision, and by the outcomes from said decision at the same time. So not everything, I've noticed certainly with recent blogs that I've been doing 5 steps to this, 5 tips for that, and such, and there's not always going to be a framework attached to every single thing I do. It's just been a little bit of a theme recently, and I dare say at some point in the future there won't be. So if that becomes distressing for you, if I don't give you a list of 6 things to do something about, then please by all means get in touch, and I'll certainly work on doing that. It just feels a little bit easier in terms of methodology, in terms of process creation for me, to be able to say, okay, I've shared some information, what do you want to do about that now? And then moving on from there. So the 9 ideas to enhance your motivation experience, of course, which was the title of the blog, was the first one was setting clear goals. If you know why you're doing something, you know what it is, and you know what your goals are to satisfy those, you're just simply in a much better position. That's just a fact. Provide support not only to other people as you're working through something, but to you. And in fact, actually, that's maybe the other way around. Make sure, firstly, you provide support to yourself before you look at providing support to others. The usual example there is put your mask on the airplane before helping others, because if you don't, you might just be unconscious before you have a chance to help anyone. And please, I implore this in the blog as well, please don't ever miss an opportunity to provide support to yourself or to others. Celebrate. Many of us don't really do a good job of celebrating. Celebrating the small wins as we move forward, celebrating the bigger chunks of wins. Some people are just kind of like, that's what I get paid to do, I'm just going to move on to the next thing. Celebration is a key part of acknowledging the milestones, acknowledging the effort, acknowledging the learnings, acknowledging the growth, and then giving yourself an opportunity to use all that information to get even better as you move forward. The next one was self-reflection, and use your self-reflection time for good. And what I mean is for the good of you, for the good of your community, for the good of the planet and such, and figure out how and where you reflect best and build that into your schedule, build that into your routine. As you move forward, I've provided this example once or twice in the past. I'm not exactly sure what forum I did it in, but my best reflection time is when I'm driving and when I'm running. And more so when I'm running outside, and not so much on the treadmill for some reason. But I get that opportunity not to be distracted by devices, not to be distracted by much else other than keeping myself upright, not running into danger or not driving into danger and such. And those are when I get my learnings, my key epiphanies and such. Growth mindset, and I know that I said I wouldn't repeat anything in this list here, but it never ever does any harm to mention that your mindset should be growth oriented. And as I offered up at the beginning of the pod here, I think that's why we're all here, to try and in some way take some tidbits from the information shared and give you that opportunity to use that for your own growth. Promoting autonomy, just essentially basically being able to do things in a way that you want to do them in a time frame that is commensurate with how you best work or what time availability you have, and giving you that autonomy. Now, autonomy, absolutely, in fact, all of this stuff, but autonomy specifically is not one size fits all. On some occasions, you might want 100% autonomy. You've told me what you need. I could go get that done, no problem. Other times, you might need a wee bit more support or ask for a wee bit more support. And the key is to be aware of that and then facilitate that conversation to give you what you need, because sometimes too much autonomy can be a demotivator and you end up kind of saying, everyone else seems to know what they're doing, I'm the only person that's kind of floundering here, and then some negative feelings would come up as a direct result of that. Determining the why behind the what maybe this should have been higher on the list now that I think about it, but we all genuinely want to understand why we're doing what we're doing, don't we? And I think that's fairly obvious to say that, because if it's for a reason or rationale or cause that we are truly passionate about, say for example your family or your health or such, depending on what's absolutely important to you, if you know that, then the what becomes all the more easy to absorb, to understand, and to get motivated to deliver on. Cultivating a positive mindset. I mean, honestly, who doesn't want more intentional and appropriate positivity in their lives? Back to my example of Raimi, him and I, that my job was to bring positivity into his life, and we had many, many laughs along the way about how ridiculous he thought I was most of the time, and that's just how things went. And then the last one was feedback and encouragement, like having essentially a consistent mindset on looking for opportunities to provide appropriate feedback, absorb feedback when it comes your way, and then encouragement is key. You want to be able to encourage others, you want to be able to encourage yourself, and then have that not be so much a destination of I need to remember to actually encourage them, I need to remember to provide feedback, but having it more of a journey, being a regular part of the journey makes it a little bit less onerous, doesn't it? So that's those are the nine parts there to give you a little bit of an opportunity to enhance your motivation experience. Set clear goals, provide support, celebrate, self-reflect, have a growth mindset, promote autonomy where appropriate, or I should say at an appropriate level, determine your why, which will manifest itself into the what, cultivate positivity, and then make feedback and encouragement part of your routine. I finished off the blog, my apologies, by the Coach Gaz challenge, of course, which I always do, and it was just basically to challenge you to think about a time when you were the most motivated that you've ever been, and then to think about that, was that inherently intrinsic or extrinsic? It could be both, or it could be some level. It doesn't have to be 50-50. It could be vastly intrinsic with a little bit of extrinsic. It could be one or the other, but a lot of times it could be blended as well, so don't think of them as completely separate or disparate. And then, what traits did you demonstrate to drive towards your goals? Was there anything in addition to the 9 of the list that I included that works for you? And if that's the case, folks, please do let me know. I'd love to do that. I'd love to enhance the list and make it 12 or make it 15 if you have other things that regularly work for you. Okay, so that was motivation, and I hope you took time to read the blog. If not, and then hopefully you've got what you need from this part of the delivery. On to the mastermind review, and as I mentioned earlier, Geno Auriemma, apologies if I've butchered his name, I don't think I have, and it was on leadership, and I thought I really enjoyed this one, and he essentially went through a vast amount of topics. If you are subscribed to I think I said mastermind, I meant masterclass on that. So if you subscribe to Masterclass, then I would, if you have an interest in team dynamics and sports and culture and leadership, then I would absolutely recommend this one. Very, very well delivered. Just one of these guys that seems to have a commanding presence, and when he talks, you listen. And he talks about every great team member. Every great team has team members who always do what's right for the team and the goals of the team. The ability to look at your teammates and say, at the end of the day, I couldn't have done this without you. This is a we, this is not a me, and such. And then enjoying helping people get better than they are. He talks about also how to be a resilient leader, and if you don't expect to get hit, then you're not going to build up resilience, by taking the hits. And he mentions that you're born with certain characteristics, and then your environment nurtures these characteristics and creates other characteristics, and then your experiences further mold the characteristics into the person that you are today. He talks about controlling the controllables, and acknowledging that the uncontrollables are always going to be there. And then goes on to discuss the difference between getting beat and losing. So in his interpretation, getting beat means that you did everything you were supposed to do and the other team just did it better. I love that, I really do. And then losing is you didn't hold up your end of the bargain. You didn't do everything you were trained to do. You didn't do everything you committed to doing. And then he goes on to talk about the power of listening, and leading starts with listening, the ability to listen more than you talk, being available, being a good listener, being in the moment, always having the best interests of your teammates at heart, and then changing with the times. So if you imagine, this is a college basketball coach that's been doing it for literally decades, and the amount of girls that have come through his program over the years, and the changes in generation, the changes in attitude, the changes in technology, the changes in communication styles and such, the ability to be able to be flexible and adaptable to changing with the times was an area that he concentrated on. And then he talks about strategies for effective leadership. Tell it like it is. Establish a common goal. If you're not accessible as a leader, in whatever way that means to you in either a physical or virtual environment, people will be afraid to come to you with a problem. And that's a problem in and of itself. And then what your team do is what matters. It doesn't matter what or how you've done, or how much you know. The only thing that matters is what your team do. That kind of resonated with me a little bit on, we're talking about intention on one of the previous pods and one of the previous blogs as well. Kind of doesn't matter what your intention was, this is what you did, and then being measured on that. It talks about building a leadership team, finding the right people to support you, setting the vision and determining who and what you need to be able to carry out or work towards that vision, knowing what you don't know, and then finding someone with the same vision who knows the things that you don't know. Easier said than done, of course, sometimes, especially if you have blind spots, or you maybe don't have the resources to be able to attract people to work with you. But at least having that knowledge and knowing what the gap is between what you can, say, for example, afford and what your actual utopia situation would be if resources were not an issue. He also talks about giving autonomy to your key people to do what they're good at. And then if you hire the wrong people, and I haven't seen a lot of content out there, folks, about this in terms of, what to do if you get it wrong. Because if you have been in a position where you have hired people in your career, at some point or another, for whatever reason or reasons, you will have got it wrong. And you'll have to make a decision on that. And then he basically just says, you owe it to be fair and to move the wrong people along as quickly as possible, because you're essentially not doing them any favours by keeping them where they are, and they're not able to get your team, where you want to be. So as quickly as possible, making the decision, not too early, of course, so people need a chance to settle in and bed in and get used to things, but not 5 minutes after they walk in the door because they didn't, hang their jacket up on the coat rack or something bizarre like that. And he mentioned a thing that I thought was quite poignant. Coaches get too much credit when they win and way too much criticism when they lose. Think about that in your ongoing journey. If you're in a leadership position or some position where you have responsibility for delivery of a certain thing that's done by a third party, i.e. your team, by other people, how much criticism do you absorb as a result of that? Hopefully you don't deflect it to other people. Your job as a leader is to take the hits, as I mentioned a wee while ago there. But when praise is coming your way, sometimes it can be just a little bit over the top. And certainly, absolutely, sometimes when criticism comes your way, you're kind of like, whoa, wait a minute, that is not cool. We're not doing that right now. Take a breath and let's have a proper conversation. He then goes on to talk about how to set goals and track progress, both individual and team goals, and they are meant to be achievable, lofty enough, and stretch goals, as we would maybe say in corporate land, but within the team's ability to be able to achieve would be key. And then putting yourself in a position to achieve that goal, doing everything that you need to do to give yourself the best opportunity to achieve the goal. And then he says, and I thought this was fairly profound, so if you're writing anything down, maybe you want to write this part down, is 2 reasons you don't do something. Just 2. Either 1, you don't know how, and then you can be taught how to do that. So 1 is you don't know how to do it, or number 2, you just don't feel like doing it. That's fairly profound. I thought that was hard hitting for me. So if you think about that, when you're trying to motivate someone else to do something and they don't have the motivation to do it, that might be the latter. They just don't feel like it. And nothing you can do can get them to be G'd up in a way that they would be able to in some way build that motivation to be able to do it. They don't know how, or they don't want to, essentially, is what he's saying there. He talks about tracking and data and how to use data for tracking. And then if you want more out of life, out of your performance, then you have to do more. And then he goes on to discuss accountability and being accountable to yourself first and then to the team. And then he talks about scrutinizing, your performance, how you are or where you are based on your targets and such. Maybe that's back to the data part. And he says the best time to scrutinize your team the most is when you're having success, because it's more palatable at that point and it's probably more easy to change in the moment rather than when something has happened and you're on a little bit of a downturn in terms of performance and success. Goes on to discuss effort. Everybody wants to win, but not everyone wants to put in the hard work to be the best. I know how that feels in terms of the team that I support from back home in Scotland, and I genuinely know that they genuinely want to win, but I'm not sure they will do absolutely everything in their power to win. And that's the way I feel when I see how they're performing. Building trust and giving feedback, being equal in treatment, being fair with your treatment as well. And then he goes on to discuss trust, and the quickest way to lose trust is to lie, is to give people false hope, is to treat team members differently. And one thing I thought was fantastic, and I don't know if you've ever done this, I know that I haven't, well, not as direct as he said it, but asking someone, if you were me, how would you coach you? So I'll repeat that again. If you were me, how would you coach you? And so put that in say, for example, in the workplace or for whatever, leadership or coaching relationship you have with someone. If you had that exact conversation, how would you like to be coached? I say that in my intro sessions or discovery sessions with any potential new client. How do you want to be challenged? How do you want to be coached? What do you know about what your trigger points are and where you would have the best response and so on. So I really love that. If you were me, how would you coach you? And then criticizing or critiquing the action that someone takes, not the person. You always do this. I knew that's all I could expect from you. Why did I even trust you in the first place? Get all that garbage out of your vocabulary and critique the action. We asked you to do this, you did that. Can you tell us why? You were intending to do this, but this is the way that it turned out. Give us that information as to why that's the case so we can react to that and make some course corrections along the way. And then he goes on to discuss success and failure. And I did a blog and a pod, of course, on failing and how to fail well, essentially. And his kind of angle on that was you're not a failure, you just failed at trying to do something. And that's fairly commensurate with what I talked about before. And then a direct quote, if you don't mind me reading this out here. He's treating failure and success as the imposters that they are. Treating failure and success as the imposters that they are. It almost goes back to, the praise you get when things are going well and the criticism you get when they're not. Treat it all with a pinch of salt. Celebrating when your team is struggling, identifying areas where you're actually making progress, focusing on them, creating scenarios when you can communicate that progress and come up with plans to address other areas of challenge or areas that are producing some negative results. And then finding joy and contributing to the team. Really, truly, genuinely asking yourself, am I bringing the joy? I'll ask you that question right now. Do you bring the joy to every single interaction you have, to every single endeavor, to every single team that you work on, play for? Are you an energy giver or are you an energy taker or sucker, whatever language you want to use there? Figure out, ask yourself this, what am I actually bringing to the team to make us better? In general terms, you're going to have good days, bad days, good performances, bad performances and such. But what are you genuinely intending to and working towards that is going to help the team be better. I thought that was quite a poignant way to almost finish off the masterclass. And then finally he talks about, the tools to build your team. You can't control every situation that you're in. You can't control what comes next, and you can't make someone, exactly what you want them to be. But you can give them the tools, you can give them the information, you can give them the support, and you can then see if they will actually be able to make it. That's back to, you can't motivate anyone, like I said during that particular segment of the pod. And the very thing he finished with was, work hard and make a lot of friends. Don't do this in isolation. Make as many friends as you can. You never know when the friends might come calling on you, or you might have cause to go calling on them at some point in the future. But essentially, build an appropriate, robust network that you can serve and can serve you as you go forward. Okay, folks. A little bit longer again than I thought this one was going to be, but I hope this episode of the Best You, a coaching podcast, was indeed a valuable use of your time, and that you will join me for future episodes as we move forward together. If you did find it valuable, I would really appreciate if you would pass it on to at least one more person and say, you might want to check this out at some point. There's some good content here. If you don't think it's good content, then obviously you're not going to do that. And once again, if there are any topics that I have not covered at any point, you can, blatantly or anonymously contact me and say, can you cover this topic? Can you cover that? It's a wee bit better if we get a dialogue as to what's important to you about that topic. Why is this going to help? And maybe some context and around it. But I would be more than happy to cover any topic as we move forward. And don't forget to take a peek at my website, garygillen.com, for more content and information. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, if you want to subscribe to the Facebook page, Gary Gillen Coaching, that would be great. I think I'm going to set up an Instagram page, or I don't know what you call it. Obviously, that's how much I know about Instagram as we go forward. But my understanding is that Facebook feeds through to Instagram, so I might have an opportunity to reach some more folks with that as we move forward. So until next time, my friends, thank you very much once again for taking the time to tune in, and all the very best to you on your ongoing journey. Take care now. I'll talk to you soon. Cheerio.